And speaking of garbage, our old mates in China. Now, China is, at the moment, involved in any effort they possibly can to pretend that coronavirus, if it didn't start, it certainly got out of control in China, but we all know it started in China. Now, it either came from the lab or the wet market, but the whole point was that the first human case of coronavirus recorded anywhere in the world was in Wuhan, China. And there was an interesting report over the weekend which was put out by the New York Times. Now, in between all of their Trump derangement syndrome and all the rest of it, now that they've killed the orange man, they can now start to get back to reporting the news, including that China is, of course, now trying to peddle falsehoods about where coronavirus came from. Now, remember, at one point in time, they tried to pretend that coronavirus came from an American soldier. Not true. Then they tried to say that it came from Korea. Then they tried to say that it came from Europe. And the latest nonsense that they are starting to serve up is that all of this came from foreign food products, including Australia and meat products that were frozen and sold to places like China. Now, there's a few words here, but you've got to follow along with the bouncing ball because it is worth reading out of this article of the New York Times. Have a look at this. The campaign seems to reflect the anxiety within the ruling Communist Party about the continuing damage to China's international reputation brought by the pandemic, because they were the ones who, remember, stopped the domestic flights because they knew there'd be a problem if it went from Wuhan to Beijing, but if it went from Wuhan to Brisbane, no problem. If it went from Wuhan to New York, Wuhan to London, Wuhan to Rome. Western officials have been criticising Beijing for trying to conceal the outbreak when it first erupted. The Chinese government, is rarely willing to publicly address its own shortcomings, surprise, surprise, often preferring to redirect attention elsewhere and rally the country against a common enemy. That common enemy, first the US, now places like Australia, where the latest punch of propaganda being pushed here is about the president giving him a fresh chance to stoke nationalist sentiment and distract from the systemic problems in China, including lingering wealth gaps. Put simply, mega rich, mega poor in China. Don't talk about it. The ultimate lefty mind trick. These are not the droids you're looking for. So we get this crap that came out today. Again, this is a derivation of the reporting that was in the New York Times today, suggesting that COVID-19 arrived in Wuhan via frozen meat products, including Australian steak. Chinese officials have previously claimed that they had detected the virus on frozen products, including chicken wings from Brazil, squid from Russia, shrimp from Ecuador, pork from Germany, and salmon from Norway, until I need my glasses. The World Health Organization, which of course is heavily controlled by China, says there is no evidence that the virus was transmitted this way, but the Chinese government have doubled down on the theory because, of course, they treat their populations like mushrooms, and we know what one of the key ingredients in feeding a mushroom is. The problem is the rest of the world is not China yet. China might owe plenty of the debt. They may be able to win global conflict by simply calling in debt, but they can't spread their lies. Of course, one of the many reasons why they are trying to go after Australia and make us an example of a nation that displeases China is all of the things that they've done in the past little while about barley, about our coal products, and even about our meat, pretending that there's something wrong with it. Remember the wine tariffs that currently exist. When in truth, the reasons that China do not like countries that are free like Australia is because we have bills currently before the federal parliament, and we'll wait and see whether this thing can get passed, but apparently Jackie Lambie was for this today and is now potentially against the foreign interference bill tonight. We'll double check where this all lands tomorrow. But of course, the foreign relations bill, which means when universities go and do deals against the national interest, the federal government would be able to put a line through it. When states like Victoria sign up to the Belt and Road against our national interest, the federal government would be able to override it. One of the many reasons why China does not like us. But we cannot trust a government that has lied about its own responsibility when it came to coronavirus and is now trying to pretend that it came from everywhere but within their own walls.